I'm Scared is finally premiered and it's everything I could have hoped for. It's filled with so many tiny details and Easter eggs that it manages to tickle that back part of my brain. A sensory overload that makes me feel right at home. A show that inspires people to create something of their own. That's how the script ended up on my screen. I recently watched the new season and was so moved by it, I was just compelled to make a video to help spread the wonder of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. I've seen some theory videos from Pearl Fountain and RemGams, and MatPat, and learning all the small details I missed on my first watch gave me so much joy. However, though I did have to rewrite my script completely, I still feel like their videos are kinda just stuck in the big boy room.
Try and keep up, mate.
I believe all that theory stuff is just distraction from the deeper values of the show, what the creators are really trying to tell us. Not through any story or plot, but through the powerful language of vibes. However, I will explain what's up the stairs, and prove that the web and TV seasons aren't in the same universe, and it's all a time loop. I'm not really going to be talking about lore or hidden details unless it has to do with the lesson plan of the show. Shows are really just vehicles to convey simple emotions after all. Instead of just doing a video about what theories are going on around the show, I'm going to focus more on how I related to the show and what it means to me. Join me on a shallow dive of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. A new day rises and Duck wants to know what to do next. As Red Guy explains that they have nothing on schedule, Duck decides to ask Briefcase what to do, but he starts to head out to work. Duck seems jealous, unlike Red Guy. The teacher sings a song about jobs, saying working will make you feel like an angel, and manages to fit in a verse that shames the unemployed when Red Guy says he wants to do nothing.
Are you gonna publish my novel? Then leave me alone! I could be the one.
Oh cool, they're doing a song that has social commentary. However, during the song, the trio are left at a factory. They ask the employees where Briefcase went, but they ignore them as Red Guy goes to answer a nagging phone. Yellow Guy starts working on the line, but it seems the finished products instantly get recycled into more material for parts. The cyclical hell of working a factory job. I've worked on a factory line, so I can attest to just how realistic this critique is. Especially when Duck's efforts at work are deemed faulty. He doesn't vibe well with the others, so he gets transferred to work on the website with Duncan. It's time for lunch, which comes from a vending machine. This perfectly shows how easily the working class is almost funneled into these bad health routines. There's even a portion on the tray for a cigarette. Free lunch is even worse, which the incongruent Duck is subjected to. Meanwhile, Red Guy seems to be a perfect fit for the office position. He even gets better lunch. Perks of being upper management, I guess. His sycophants egg him on with ideas of power, telling him he could even fire somebody.
Find the whole world!
An onboarding video for new hires is playing, stating that work is like a sporting team, or an army. It also mentions how accidents are good because it helps you appreciate not suffering an accident. Teamwork is key, but Duck is having some issues with the hierarchy. He goes to complain to Red Guy, but it's too late. The power has already gone to his head and he fires Duck. He doesn't even wash his hands when he runs into Yellow Guy in the bathroom. Yellow Guy then ponders on what it means to have a job. A speech interrupted by the urinal as we follow him outside on a smoke break. An impactful yet subtle juxtaposition of the naive new hire and the worker who's been there for years. He comes back as Yellow Guy finishes his speech, which ends up just being some workplace video about coping with the concept of being a worker, complete with a hotline number. Duck has an exit interview in the elevator that decides he still has a place in the company. They just have to fix Duck's attitude. We go into a stress management song that goes over the basic ways to deal with it. Drugs, mindfulness. It's kind of reminiscent of free counseling you get when you can't afford a therapist. Duck calls bullshit and tries to get out, but is sent to file a complaint with the care hound. The hound promptly chews him up and spits him out as a newly reformed employee who is eager to get back to work.
I'd better get back to work.
Duck returns to the workplace fitting in more than ever. functioning as a proper member of society. He's returned in time for a retirement party. Even Mr. Peterson swings by. Wait, isn't that red guy? But he's older now. And the retirement party is for the yellow guy? Okay, so apparently 40 years have passed even though Duck hasn't aged a day. It really makes me think about how repetitive dead-end jobs can be. Having worked various blue-collar jobs, time really starts to blend together. There's nothing to break up the monotony. Every day feels the same, and all of a sudden, 40 years pass. Or 10 years in my case. Duck starts to freak out, which unintentionally results in Yellow Guy suffering a major accident. The others seem to see it as a good thing.
Finally, the accident!
Yeah, he's here!
Brainwashed by the company to see it for anything other than the tragedy it really is. When Duck tells Red Guy to do something, he just instinctively fires Yellow Guy. Turns out all that power he thought he had couldn't save his old friend. Duck grabs the first aid kit and opens it, only to find briefcase, causing the original song to start back up as though nothing happened. The song ends, leaving the trio traumatized by the memories of the lives they were ripped out of. Duck asks what all that was for. In return, Briefcase tosses Duck a single gold coin which promptly stabs him in the eye. Now that's an interesting concept. What was all that work for? We work by pouring our blood, sweat, and tears into a team that would fire us the moment we became a problem, and all we truly get back in return is cold, emotionless money. I've had managers tell me to my face that they didn't have to respect me, and it's very dehumanizing. The idea of being alienated is also well explored with Duck, all the ways he's forced to fit in. From crappy therapy to shaming him with an even worse lens. He quickly becomes just another cog in the machine. But that's ultimately what drives the economy under capitalism. The owners will measure you not by how productive you are, but how well you can assimilate to their cause. Duck's precious thing he made was destroyed because it wasn't good enough. But enough about jobs. Let's see what else life has to offer us. The trio sit in the living room when Duck suddenly proclaims he's dead, according to the newspaper. Not enough water. I can relate. Red Guy gets a little bit flustered. Maybe even a little bit jealous. They obviously don't know what it means as the two insist that they should be the one who's dead. Suddenly, Duck's heart falls out and rolls away before it dissolves, summoning a talking casket. After some awkward small talk and a little mix-up, the casket gives a wreath to Duck, proclaiming his dead status. Red Guy wants to make sure, so the casket cuts off Duck's finger, showing a lack of blood flow. Yellow Guy wants to check too, so he cuts off his finger. But he starts bleeding, so he's obviously still alive. This kinda unravels MatPat's theory that Yellow Guy is dead. Like, completely. Suck it, MatPat. After Red Guy checks his ID to see if he's dead, which he isn't, they all break out into a song to get ready for the funeral. Everyone dresses up in their Sunday best, but Yellow Guy and Red Guy get a little sidetracked making a shepherd's pie. They head on over to the funeral just as Duck is being laid to rest. He boasts about having his organs removed, before being hushed by the casket. He's dead after all, and the dead don't speak. There's a small misunderstanding about the name on the gravestone, but they ignore it and move on to the eulogy from the best friend, who's apparently Red Guy. There's also a beautiful performance by Yellow Guy that gets rudely interrupted by Casket. A final tribute to Duck's life plays, and they all go home.
See you later, floorboard person.
So apparently being dead means you don't get to be alive anymore, meaning Duck has to stay forever. Red Guy and Yellow Guy sit alone in the living room trying to get over Duck's death. Yellow Guy is trying to rationalize what Duck being dead truly means. In the kitchen, a reception is being held for Duck. David, attended by a bunch of strangers. They reminisce over David, and give Yellow Guy and Red Guy a gift bag with a friend kit, before vanishing. Yellow Guy sits in his room and asks, what happens after we die? He's answered by the lamp, who talks about the possibility of paradise and reincarnation, but ends with his own theory before going to sleep, leaving Yellow Guy in a mist of confusion. Yellow Guy and Red Guy flip through possible replacements for Duck, but Yellow Guy flips out and causes a stain that ends up coming to life. Though Yellow Guy seems put off by it, Red Guy invites the stain to be their third. The three then recreate the opening to Yellow's disdain. Back in the grave, Casket leaves Duck alone, but is quickly called back by Duck to help him pass the time. At the house, Red finishes giving Stain the tour, and the three settle down in their respective chairs. While Red Guy explains the mundanity of sitting around and doing nothing, Stain breaks out into a song about the wonders of being alive, getting their core values in the process before being stopped by the others. They're used to a more world-driven plot rather than a character-driven plot, and it's only episode 2, so like, who could blame them? Stain spots the area that Casket popped out of, bringing up painful memories for the others.
Kind of terrible and wonderful at the same time.
Yellow shuns them for not being more like Duck, which kind of hits home for me. Not being to grow up as myself because it was inconvenient for others, it breaks any sense of reality for yourself. Stain's sense of wonder is really hard for Yellow Guy to process. Yellow Guy just lost a major part of his life, and he's not ready to move on, unlike Red Guy who starts making a list of what Stain can and can't look at. Kinda like an overbearing parent. Duck calls Casket again to tell him about the maggots that moved in. Casket really starts to get annoyed, so leaves Duck with his memories leading into his song with Yellow Guy. He remembers the times he spent with Duck, as he starts to make Stain look more and more like his old friend. Yellow Guy trails off with the song as he starts to dig Duck up, putting Casket out of his misery. Stain's transformation into Duck's image is complete thanks to Red Guy's unaddressed issues. Just then, Yellow Guy returns with Duck. Surprise! As tensions rise between Stain and Duck, they suddenly burst into song, singing an alternate opening to include Stain. However, Stain is not having it and kills Duck, who still has fresh maggots in him. Thanks to Pearl Fountain for pointing that out. This episode explores death in an interesting way. Duck is constantly undercutting the severity of the whole concept, while the reality of losing Duck slowly but painfully seeps into Yellow Guy and Red Guy. Meanwhile, Stain describes death, though indirectly, as terrible and wonderful, illustrating that life and death are two sides of the same coin.
Like you really built the pyramid, people.
But life is more than just about being alive. As a trans girl, I can definitely relate to Stain in this episode. I've lived most of my life as a guy, and even when I believed I had to conform, it's still hard to call what I was doing living. Stain was ready to live their life and enjoy the wonders of the world. However, the environment they respond into forced them to conform into an identity that wasn't theirs. In fact, the conformity became so intrinsic that Stain kills Duck to ensure his survival. This episode really pulled at my heartstrings. It equates being dead to not being allowed to live your life as your true self. Red Guy and Yellow Guy sit in the kitchen watching TV when Duck comes in with some snacks. While trying to open the bag, an apple starts to suggest something healthy before a stranger takes a bite of him and throws him to the ground. The stranger is accompanied by their twin, and they enter the house to help the trio. This is Lily and Todney. Apparently the trio can't open the bag because it's a family pack, and they're not a family. After trying to rationalize being a family, with Duck wanting to be the dad, Yellow Guy brings up his dad, but the twins are talking about the family. I imagine it's the same family that the far right's always trying to defend. Mainly because one of the twins flips out when Duck says family is just a word. The twins sing a song with a poorly spelled acronym. Red Guy starts to buy into this crap, saying he should be with people who look just like him. Okay, this is starting to get a little on the nose. I can't be the only one saying this. The twins decide to take the trio to meet their family, to see what a real family is like. Family. How nice of them. At the twins' home, the trio is offered some odd-looking tea. Duck complains about a smell, which turns out to be the twins' family scent. After the twins and Red Guy get a good whiff, the twins' dad comes home with another child and takes a seat on the already crowded couch. In the awkwardness, the twins put on some home movies. When the brother talks about the mother, the dad seems to get quite annoyed. Duck implores the other two to talk privately, but Tommy really hammers in the fact that they aren't a family. Suddenly, the grandma lets out a horrifying scream to signal to start a family game time.
Game time.
A prospect that all but Duck seem to celebrate. As everyone plays the game, the creepiness level really starts to skyrocket. The game itself has weird elements like these symbols, and then Lily gives Yellow Guy mother's piece. When Duck starts to voice some complaints, he gets tossed back to his home. Meanwhile, Red Guy and Yellow Guy are shown the family tree, which has pictures of the twins' ancestors. While Red Guy compliments them on framing the pictures, Yellow Guy asks about Duck so they can share the dollops, but is instead offered a picture of his own. As Red Guy starts to get excited to meet his family, the tree comes to life and offers to find it. All he needs is some DNA. Red Guy starts to get drained of his blood as the tree seems to spring back to life. The blood loss turns red on a visual trip that's just really trippy. Duck, desperate to be a father figure, implores the bread to let him be part of their family. When he's refused, he cold-heartedly takes one of the younger slices and toasts it, saying,
You know what? I'm actually glad I don't have a family.
He starts to sing about how he can be his own family. While it can be read as egotistical, there's also an argument that this song is about self-love. However, by the end, he realizes that he alone can't fill the void that family seems to be able to. From afar, at least. Yellow Guy, now separated from Duck and Red Guy, is seemingly forced to be indoctrinated into the family. He even sleeps in the same room as the twins during bedtime. While being serenaded by Toddley, Yellow Guy tries desperately to break out of this mental trap, struggling to remember the friends he came with, but eventually he falls victim to Toddley's song. Red Guy is taking a family photo, trying to get everything perfect. He's just so happy. However, right when the shot is taken, he's flung back to his home where Duck is. Yellow Guy wakes up in a daze at the dinner table. He's been forced to fill the role of mother by the family, so they can qualify for the family discount at Grotton's. Filled with fear, Yellow Guy manages to call the restaurant, and a giant tub of chicken breaks through the roof onto the table. The family now bares their teeth as they devour the chicken. Suddenly, Yellow Guy's dad comes in, but pushes Yellow Guy out of the way to join in on the feast, or maybe even feast on the family. Yellow Guy takes his chance to leave before it becomes a bloodbath. Back at the house, the three are quite put off by the whole experience. In the end, they decide that they are a family because they're a group that cares about each other very much.
And stick together.
The lesson in this one is kind of obvious. Family doesn't come from blood, but from experiences that help you bond with the people that you care about. I think Lily and Toddley saying they definitely didn't invent the board game is a subtle nod to how the idea of family as we know it is just a social construct. Family shouldn't be something that inherently chains you to a group of people who might not even have your best interest at heart. It should be with the people that you feel comfortable with. Especially if you're from an abusive household, the whole idea of a family can seem kind of cultish. Abusive cycles get passed down from generation to generation in the name of family and tradition. Found family can be just as legitimate as biological family, if not more so. To start computer day off right, the trio pluck a fresh fruit from a houseplant and summon forth the computer.
Yay!
Red Guy controls the keyboard while Duck mans the mouse. However, Yellow Guy forgot the password.
You're supposed to remember it.
Oh.
After a few false attempts, they get locked out. With computer day a failure, Yellow Guy starts to feel really down on himself. Red Guy and Duck try to reassure him by saying he's an R-word, catching Yellow Guy off guard. Suddenly, the frame freezes as a voice resembling some freaking Dare PSA starts talking about how to handle the situation. The voice forces a redo of the situation reimagined with the power of editing, where Yellow Guy stands up for himself, leaving the trio bewildered.
Is that supposed to be me?
They just see a worm rambling off to a non-existent camera. The teacher is a friendship expert with a totally legit ID and is totally an eagle, something even the computer calls bullshit on. But Warren has an answer for everything. The trio try to get back to computer day, but Warren stops them again to call out Red Guy and Duck's behavior. Which, I mean, he's right. You don't go hurling insults at someone no matter how uplifting you think you're being. Weirdly, Warren invokes his pseudo-authority to prove his point. He draws their attention to a projector he's prepared to tell a story, with one of the worst songs of the season. Red Guy pulls the plug on him and the trio start to critique the story that's obviously about him. But before they get far, Warren freezes the frame again to tell his story of not being able to make friends. No shit. When he asks how that's possible, Red Guy suggests that it's because of the way he looks. This causes something to snap in Warren. He mumbles his words as the others start listing off other reasons why he can't make friends. Warren starts crying, but plays it off as laughing. Such insults can't hurt him because he has
Rat eyes!
Not rat eye.
Using the password, the trio easily log into the internet and blast off in a quick musical break. One that's quickly ripped back to reality when we see the mundanity of them just checking their emails to each other. Well, except for Yellow Guy, who has an empty inbox. This causes his brain to go sad, and leaves him with a long face. Literally. As the others start to get worried, Warren freeze frames again to point out that their disrespect for Yellow Guy has caused this. Now, Yellow Guy has retreated into his mind, with his brain friends. I honestly love how accurate this is. As someone who has a learning disability and clinical depression, among other things, I can definitely relate to everything about this. Growing up feeling isolated, even from my family, unable to live up to their expectations, I've always had a place in my mind where I try to cope with the realities of being alive. Anyway, back on the outside, Warren says he can't help, but Red Guy baits him with a restaurant-style meal with them. Yellow Guy plays childish games with his imaginary friends when Warren freeze frames, asking if any of this seems real.
Head. Huh?
Which, I mean, it's a place where he can be himself without judgment. Instead of letting Yellow Guy have his safe space, he just insults it, saying none of it's real. However, the brain friends start to give Warren some attention, even going as far as calling him an eagle. So he joins the party while Red Guy and Duck use computer to find answers. Warren quickly gets bored of the party and tries to talk about his podcast, ruining the whole vibe and causing Yellow Guy's face to get even longer IRL, where Red Guy and Duck are working really hard to find a solution online. Meanwhile, Warren keeps trying to sell his brand to one of the brain friends, causing the rest of them to leave. Yellow Guy's safe space is all ruined, all thanks to Warren, who just drove the last friend to unalive themselves. Warren reassures him, saying that he doesn't have to be popular, he just needs one good friend, namely Warren. This drives Yellow Guy even further into his own mind. Truly a nirvana all of its own. While Red Guy and Duck get closer to finding a solution, Warren invades even the deepest parts of Yellow Guy's brain. The atmosphere quickly changes to pitch black, leaving Yellow Guy in the cold dark of nothingness. Running for his life, Yellow Guy catches a quick glimpse of Warren's true form before Duck manages to extract the pesky bee.
Pesky bee?
The next day, Computer is so moved by the power of friendship that he gives the trio a brand new computer so they can always go online.
Wow.
This catches Yellow Guy off guard because he thought the other two hated him for not being all that smart. But the others reassure him with a song about how we all have a worm in our brain telling us negative thoughts. Even Yellow Guy's brain friends have returned. He is so moved by this that he accidentally trips, breaking the brand new computer, causing them all to devolve into a vicious brawl. The end. The lesson here is less about managing friendships and more about how to stay true to your own convictions while interacting with those who you would call friends. What even is a friend? Is it someone worth changing yourself for? Do you need to change yourself? Are you the reason why people don't want to be your friend? All these expectations and anxieties compound and make it difficult to make sense of relationships. In the end, Yellow Guy is assured that there is nothing wrong with him. Warren was a little hard to read. He's obviously a manifestation of that nagging voice in the back of your head, the one that floods your thoughts with negativity and self-doubt. However, it's scary to admit that some things he said seem to be valid. Like, obviously, it's bad to use slurs against anyone, no matter how passively you may be saying it. But Warren gets pretty authoritarian with how he thinks friendships should be. His solutions ignore context or invalidate the person in a dehumanizing way. There's nothing wrong with how Yellow Guy deals with his depression, although it shouldn't be the last stop in his therapeutic process. But if Red Guy and Duck continue to so casually use dehumanizing language, how can Yellow Guy ever feel safe enough to be vulnerable enough to share his feelings? Mental health can be hard to maintain, and some conditions can really put a strain on relationships. It can be devastating, but that's why we must all work together to push for free healthcare. The trio sit in the kitchen as Duck does his visual inventory. Yellow Guy and Duck like the mundanity, but Red Guy starts to get fed up with it. He wishes he could just go somewhere else, which summons an aging train that, after doing a little prep work, sings a song about different vehicles. However, Red Guy is more interested with destinations.
Where are they going?
Eventually, the teacher starts to break down and reality sets in. The trio are back at home, sitting inside the dead car teacher. Duck and Yellow Guy are satisfied with the lesson and glad to be home, but something pushes Red Guy to continue driving. Against Yellow Guy and Duck's rational dissuasions, Red Guy manages to get the car going on the road after a rough start. While Duck and Yellow Guy complain about being in motion and not being at home, Red Guy tries to persuade them to go along with it. After some useless advice from the GPS system, they reluctantly agree and sing a song about driving.
Oh, get him out. Get him out. Oh.
Duck starts to get restless, But Red Guy is excited to be going somewhere new. After the song is done, Red Guy shows him the watch box in the back of the seat. Duck settles down with headphones while Yellow Guy is left with the boring side, alone with his reflection. Red Guy tries to cheer him up with the prospect of living in the community. This sends Yellow Guy into a daydream of some kind of welcome video. A dream interrupted by a bird flying into his window just as the car starts to run out of gas. The watch box cuts out just as the teacher wakes up. Red Guy tries to heal the teacher with raisins, killing him, and starts screaming about how he can't go back home. Suddenly, reality starts to break. The trio find themselves in real reality, stranded in an abandoned junkyard where they're forced to spend the night. Yellow Guy asks if this is their new home. Where are the neighbors? Red Guy tries desperately to keep hope alive, reassuring Yellow Guy that there'll be someone, surely. Doug starts his visual inventory. Yellow Guy starts to hear some form of chanting, just as we cut to black. The last shot is of a hand placing a toy car in front of the dollhouse from the opening. As a voice says, the journey always ends up back home. Red Guy has a need to break out of his lot in life. He can't shake the feeling that there should be more to life. But what could there be? Though I've never left the US, I have lived throughout the country. Going from a big city in Texas to a small town in Washington, I've honestly felt little difference in how life is. I may have grown and learned from experiences, especially having transitioned, but I can't really say that the economic environment is much different. Obviously, it's easier for me to live as a trans girl in Washington than in Texas, but the struggle is still the same. I just recently got an important surgery, and the end of my transition journey seems to be in sight. But what do I do after that? Just keep going to work, struggling to survive? I recognize my privilege in attaining a major surgery to help with my dysphoria, but I honestly thought it was going to take forever for me to actually get here. I should have a new lease on life, so why do I feel so stuck? A hand turns an oversized crank to spin the dollhouse and start the unnerving opening. In the kitchen, Red Guy and Yellow Guy are cleaning dishes while Duck struggles to solve a crossword puzzle. Yellow Guy gives some sort of incoherent existential answer that would never work. The suggestion is so bad that Duck decides to destroy the newspaper in his personal shredder. Red suggests to Yellow Guy that he should just stick to doing the plates, but Yellow Guy accidentally throws the dishes in the trash. Red Guy tells him to put the dishes in the cupboard, but when Yellow Guy opens the cupboard, he gets attacked by an ambush of falling plates, giving the others a good laugh. Yellow Guy can't seem to do anything right. Duck asks if they need anything else shredded. Red Guy pulls out an electric bill, which Duck says they don't need because electricity is silly stuff that ought to be free, which, yeah, I mean, he's kinda got a point, but that's not really the lesson here. So, a teacher emerges from the electric box and teaches them about electricity with an amazing song, probably the best one of the season. It's a simple song about how electricity powers most of the things in the home, and eventually will power everything in the home, including Duck's precious personal shredder. The song ends in an epic multi-guitar solo from Tracy, Red Guy, and Duck. Yellow Guy, however, can't seem to keep up with his acoustic guitar. Red Guy questions how the electric box is electric since they aren't plugged in. The reason is because they run on batteries, just like Yellow Guy? So apparently, Yellow Guy runs on batteries too, but his batteries are leaking battery acid. Tracy suggests changing his batteries, so Duck decides to switch out Yellow's batteries with Tracy's. This causes Tracy to malfunction while Yellow Guy, Yellow Guy easily solves the crossword puzzle that was giving everybody a hard time earlier. With Duck and Red Guy baffled at this, Yellow Guy also shows them a puzzle he made himself, and even looked over the electric bill to find problems with it. Duck starts to get annoyed, and kinda scared to be honest, and Tracy is still... Yellow Guy goes to get a plate, but drops the dish. This gives him the idea to get insurance. This spawns a new teacher to teach the trio all about insurance. Yellow Guy instantly finds issues with the lesson, and gives a proper definition of insurance. With his confidence shot, the teacher tries to leave, but quickly gives up and hides out of sight. Duck says everything is wrong. The yellow guy agrees as he starts to question his reality. He looks at himself in the mirror and has an internal conversation with his old self. He says he doesn't feel wrong, like the others said, or at least it doesn't hurt to think anymore. Even though it may upset the others, yellow guy decides they're not in charge of him. Maybe they never were. His reflection walks off and yellow guy sees some stairs in the mirror, but is interrupted when the mirror comes to life. Yellow guy walks away and starts walking up the stairs, telling the others he'll see them later. He approaches a door labeled the Big Boy Room, a place with a comically large duck and red guy. This room is for big boys who are smart enough to learn 2 things at the same time. That's more than 1 thing, so it's better.
Try and keep up, mate.
He's introduced to 2 teachers that teach about boundaries and sedimentary rocks. Yellow guy sees this easily for what it is. Another puppet show powered by stagehands, just like the lower levels. He quickly exits the room and goes up another set of stairs that is revealed to him. Back on the ground floor, Duck and Red Guy have almost completely upgraded the house to make everything electric. However, this quickly uses up all the energy and the power goes out, leaving them in the dark. Yellow Guy ascends the steps to the bigger boy room. This room has a scientifically advanced and futuristic Duck and Red Guy. After a brief rundown of his day, Duck suggests that Yellow Guy join in on the experiment. However, it turns out the experiment is just them heartlessly tormenting some sort of life form. There's no hypothesis to this experiment, so Yellow Guy can't see it as anything else but senseless torture in the name of science. In the name of knowledge. He pleads to them to stop, but they tell him this is as good as it gets. But there must be something more beyond the what and the how, so he leaves the room. Red Guy and Duck, stuck in darkness, do some exploring as Yellow Guy climbs some more stairs and reaches a room labeled Leslie. Inside, there's a doll-like clown playing a piano. The dollhouse sits atop of the piano as the clown recites a lesson, a poem of some sort about how we'll always be in chains. Yellow Guy asks who they are, to which they respond Leslie. Ominously, the room has props from throughout the season displayed in glass cases. Yellow Guy approaches Leslie and asks if she built all this. A good question, to which she chuckles, saying in a soft then booming voice that the situation is funny. She strikes a deal with Yellow Guy. If he can help her clean up her mess, then she'll help him. Red Guy and Duck explore the darkness, finding the dead teachers scattered about. Some are even reanimated and aimlessly roaming around. Eventually, they find the toilet teacher, just in time. Back upstairs, Leslie and Yellow Guy are just about done fixing up the dollhouse. However, the electricity still doesn't work. Regardless, Leslie hands Yellow Guy a book that he supposedly wanted from before, and sends him back down to help the others. Though he wants to stay with her, Leslie assures him that he belongs downstairs, so that he can show the others the knowledge within the book. However, as Yellow Guy heads back down, the camera shows us another set of stairs behind the piano, to an even higher level. Back at the bottom, Red Guy and Duck start to get used to being in the dark. It's given them a newfound appreciation for each other. Just then, Yellow Guy makes it back downstairs, but an electricity-starved Duck switches out the batteries between Yellow Guy and Electracy, causing Yellow Guy to revert back to his former, unbalanced self. The electricity comes back on. Electracy proclaims that we can't live without electricity before returning from whence they came. Yellow Guy tries to remember what he wanted to show the others, but ends up shredding the book as the others cheer on the simple joy. Enlightenment forever lost. Well, that was a trip. Honestly, I don't even know where to begin. So I'm gonna start in the middle. What exactly is electricity to Yellow Guy? What are his batteries? In the simplest sense, I think it's his brain. Well, not exactly. I kinda saw it changing the batteries as a representation of taking medicine. Let me explain. You see, I have ADHD, among other things. Growing up with a learning disability, I was always comparing myself to others because my ability to do basic things seemed so inferior to everyone else. I was seemingly unable to keep up with my peers, and the standards set by my family didn't help. However, I started taking medication, 250 milligrams of Concerta. Everything seemed to just make more sense. That's why I feel a sort of connection with Yellow Guy. He's just like me, for real. This is why simple things like the opposite of down become obvious when Yellow Guy changed his batteries. He's actually able to understand how obviously wrong the misinformation being spewed by the teachers really is. And he's right to question where these ideas are coming from. Like this one. Where did it come from? Get the shit out of here. However, being able to run on all cylinders isn't the end-all be-all. Yellow Guy is finally able to ascend the stairs, but now he has to conquer the big boy room. The big boys are so smart. How insulting it is that we aren't as smart as them.
Yeah, we're big boys.
Big boys.
Big boys. Try and keep up, mate.
I mean, they're still learning the same kind of lesson, but more. That makes it way better. After all, there's more. And the big boys deserve it because they're so smart. Wait, is that Elon Musk? Damn it, I knew it was a metaphor for capitalism. The Yellow Guy, however, is not going to let his greed and ego keep him from seeing that there's more to life than just having as much as you can get. And so, he pushes on instead of selling out. He's made it to the bigger boys' room. Finally, a place where clear-minded people can congregate. The bigger boys don't need lessons because they already know everything. They do their own experimentation. Oh hey, that test subject looks a lot— Oh god! What's the hypothesis for this experiment? There is no hypothesis? The bigger boys know everything, so there's no need to learn. The experiment is a means to find a hypothesis. Purpose so driving that the bigger boys disregard the harm their experiments may cause. They're so caught up with whether they could, they never wonder whether they should. However, Yellow Guy has this little thing called empathy, which helps him keep his sanity. He refuses the bliss of the bigger boys' room, and thus ascends the next flight of stairs. In the attic, Yellow Guy finally meets Leslie. Congratulations, you tripped so hard that you met God. Leslie seems to know everything, including what Yellow Guy wants, which apparently is some kind of book. Oh, this must be one of those holy books. With this, he can finally help the others. He can show them the wondrous lessons he's been shown. Wait, does that mean she's just another teacher? Damn it. When he comes back down, Doug switches out the good batteries with the bad. Unable to comprehend or even recognize the knowledge he's received, and pressured by the expectations of his peers, he shreds the book. His blissful ignorance hurls him back into the cyclical trap that he's been lost in, the light of hope now dimmer than ever before. Before we move on to the next section, I just want to talk about a few things. Firstly, I like how Yellow Guy was able to ascend the stairs because he was able to become more and more in control of himself. Each room, he used self-awareness and awareness of his surroundings to ascend further and further. However, when he started mindlessly listening to Leslie's lessons— holy fuck, that's hard to say. She is a teacher after all. Yellow Guy was sent back downstairs. I also like that because of the selfishness of Duck and Red Guy, mostly Duck, the light of the batteries were severed from Yellow Guy. Having nothing but his friends to rely on, Yellow Guy seemingly has no choice but to fall back on the toxic patterns that the trio have been trying to break out of. I've recently cut out some toxic people in my life, and I'm much better for it. However, it took me 3 years of trying to finally free myself. This was my found family, the friends that freed me from the toxic patterns of my traditional family. Without them, I thought I would be truly alone. So, I leaned back into my toxic traits hoping I could live up to their standards. I was scared. Scared of being wrong, scared of being alone. That was before I climbed the last staircase and learned what true loneliness was. I'm sure everyone knows about Carl Sagan. He once wrote an essay called The Art of Baloney Detection. In it, he argues against the idea of, well, baloney. Baloney, like spiritualism and religion, that preys on fear. Fear of death, fear of the unknown, fear of loss.
I know how much I want to believe that my parents have just abandoned the husks of their bodies, like insects or snakes molting, and gone somewhere else. I understand those feelings might make me easy prey even for an unclever con, or for normal people unfamiliar with their unconscious minds, or for those suffering from a dissociative psychiatric disorder.
An attempt to console those who can't accept the idea of death. Why is nobody talking about the constellation of
Haldane imagined a future where the stars have darkened and space is mainly filled with a cold, thin gas. Nevertheless, if we wait long enough, statistical fluctuations in the density of this gas will occur. Over immense periods of time, the fluctuations will be sufficient to reconstitute a universe something like our own. If the universe is infinitely old, there will be an infinite number of such reconstitutions.
This is the horrific beauty of time. Regardless of what rationalizations the human mind weaves, time marches on continuously, with or without us. I think of it as a new game plus type thing. The way we transfer our stats to the next playthrough is by passing on stories in hopes of guiding the next generation. There is no immortality, only eternity. However, that is no reason to give up. The things you do in life get thrown into the formula that equates to the amalgam of life. That's why democracy is so important. When Christianity talks about the second coming, they don't realize they're talking about class consciousness. So what does this mean for the trio? Okay, so this is how I see it. Each season of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared has a main character. In the web series, the story is resolved by Red Guy, and has the Yellow Guy's dad as the antagonist. However, in the TV series, the story is resolved by Yellow Guy, and Leslie is the antagonist, preventing Yellow Guy from reaching higher and higher levels. If the universe is infinitely old, there will be an infinite number of such reconstitutions. I've been thinking of where the idea that God is everywhere came from. I know some spiritualists talk about how we are all God or something like that. Now let's think about the reconstitutions from the constellation of Haldane. If we think of life as a game with as many playable characters as there are life forms, then we can think of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared as a game, and each season as a playthrough with a different character. That was where the last flight of stairs led. A game over screen. Were you successful? That's for you to decide. Only you, who would be God, can judge your actions. I guess, in a way, Leslie saved Yellow Guy from throwing his life away. So, that theoretically solves what was upstairs, and whether or not Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is a time loop. Fuck you, MatPat. Now all that's left is the book. Well, that's easy. Stories. Stories that contain lessons. Lessons that help you guide this giant ship that we call planet Earth. That's all it will ever be. However, without constant upkeep, reflection, and adaptation, the lessons start to get stale. As life grows and progresses, so must traditions. Religion isn't a bad thing, but using religion to justify holds of power and hoards of wealth is evil. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is a powerful show helmed by insanely talented artists. There's so much silliness and cheekiness in its building blocks that it acts as a vehicle that can be used to tell 1,000 different stories, or even the same story in 1,000 different ways. It appeals to a lot of people because of the small details and breadcrumbs that lead to open-ended theories. However, I believe the creators made it in a way that people like me, who find it hard to keep up with theories like that, can not only appreciate the show, but fully experience it in a way that the big boys are too preoccupied to notice.
Try and keep up, mate.
Oh, hey, you made it to the end of the video. That's surprising. Go ahead and leave a like if you learned anything from this video, or if you just enjoyed it. And leave a comment to tell me if I was wrong with anything, or if I missed anything, because I always miss a lot of obvious clues. If they were snakes, they'd bite me. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and check out my other things in the description. Thanks again for watching the video. Hope you all have a great day.